Today, we're going to break down some pretty intense electrical accidents. And look, these aren't just stories, they're critical lessons about what happens when high voltage meets human error. So let's get right into it.
It's a question we probably don't ask ourselves much, right? You flip a switch, the lights come on. Simple. But the power behind that switch? Well, it demands constant respect. So what happens when that respect slips, even for just a moment?
This invisible force is literally everywhere. It's so baked into our daily lives that it's easy, so easy, to get complacent. But with high voltage, complacency isn't a gamble. No, it's a guarantee for disaster. To really understand the stakes here, we need to look at what happens when things go wrong. We're going to open up two case files that show just how quickly a totally normal day can turn into a life-altering event. Okay, our first case. It starts with a job that's been done hundreds, maybe thousands of times before. It's a story of how a small, seemingly harmless decision during a routine task led to a really devastating outcome. So get this. The person involved wasn't some rookie. He was a safety manager. His task was simple, just a regular inspection of this high-voltage switching gear. Everything about the day felt completely, totally normal. He's following the procedure. The power gets shut down in sequence, and he opens that final switch, cutting power to the main equipment. But then he notices a little bit of dust on the primary cables, an impromptu, unauthorized task. He just grabs a duster to quickly clean it off. A simple act of tidiness. What could go wrong? But he made a critical, and I mean critical, assumption. The power coming into the switch was never cut. It was still energized with thousands of volts. Okay, now look at this diagram because it shows the mistake so clearly. You can see that main power line up at the top? The manager opened the switch right here. That de-energized everything below it. But the cables above the switch, the very ones he tried to dust, remained fully charged. He forgot the number one rule. Test before you touch. The moment that duster got too close, the air itself just broke down. A flashover. Think of it as a massive arc of electricity, leapt right to the manager. The result was a huge bang and severe second-degree burns across his arms and chest. You know, the key lesson from this is brutally simple. Assumptions are deadly. You have to verify. Always. All right, let's move on to our next case, and you'll see how these things build on each other. Accidents like these are almost never the result of a single failure. It's more often a chain reaction, a cascade of small errors that just happen to line up in the absolute worst way. So here we have a technician. He's just finished his repairs on a utility pole. The main work is done. All that's left is to get the line re-energized. But he's alone, the wind is picking up, and you can just feel a bunch of small pressures starting to build. And this slide just perfectly illustrates that cascade. First, strong winds make it hard to operate the switch. So, frustrated, he climbs higher for better leverage, which puts him closer to the energized lines. He's also working alone. No supervisor, no second set of eyes. And then, the final error in the chain. He wasn't wearing his high-voltage insulating gloves. Each step was a small compromise that took him closer and closer to disaster. Looking at these cases together, you really start to see patterns emerging from the chaos. These aren't just isolated incidents of bad luck. They are predictable outcomes of specific, repeated failures in safety protocol. And the data makes this crystal clear. The root causes are almost always human factors. Mistaken assumptions, like thinking a line is dead when it isn't, skipped procedures, like failing to test for voltage or doing unauthorized work, and of course, missing or improper safety gear. These are the threads that connect these tragedies. So how do we break these patterns? Well, the solutions are direct and they are absolutely non-negotiable. First, prohibit that impromptu work. You have to stick to the plan. Second, and this is the most critical, always verify. Test before you touch. Third, wear the right PPE for the job. Fourth, high voltage work is not a solo activity. Supervision is essential. And finally, always, always respect the safe approach distance. These aren't suggestions, they are lifelines. You know, when you strip away all the technical details, all the diagrams and the procedures, you're left with one fundamental truth about working with electricity. Sure, rubber gloves and insulated tools are essential, but they are the last line of defense. The first and most important layer of protection is your mindset.
caution, that healthy, vigilant respect for the power you're dealing with, that is the best insulation you will ever have.
After seeing what can happen in just a fraction of a second, this question isn't just for the professionals, it's for all of us. The power is hidden in the walls, it's over our heads, so how will you look at it now? Will you remember the invisible danger?